Le thème de cette table ronde, c'est les révolutions en marche, Revolutions underway. Pourquoi? Parce qu'on le voit bien, le monde évolue extrêmement rapidement, les méthodes de travail changent vite, très vite, que ce soit dans le domaine financier, dans le domaine technologique, dans le domaine social. Et l'innovation, aujourd'hui, est vraiment au cœur des stratégies de toutes les grandes entreprises au niveau mondial. Des nouveaux modèles de développement sont actuellement en construction. Cela bouleverse nos habitudes et nos mentalités, et l'on voit bien que ce nouveau siècle est réellement en route. C'est pour ça que l'on parle de révolution, une révolution sociale, une révolution industrielle aussi, une révolution des mentalités. Et pour illustrer justement ces grands changements, nous allons avoir ce soir 5 exemples très concrets de ce qui se fait aujourd'hui sur la planète. Premier exemple, on démarrera avec la France, avec Blue Kiwi Software. Monsieur Valente est à ma droite. Cette société contribue à bouleverser les méthodes de travail et de management avec les réseaux sociaux d'entreprise. Blue Kiwi a créé une sorte de Facebook de l'entreprise. Nous verrons cela avec vous, Monsieur Valente, dans un instant. Vous êtes président de cette entreprise que vous avez fondée en 2006. Puis nous irons ensuite au Royaume-Uni avec Nick Moon, que je salue, cofondateur de l'une des 30 plus importantes entreprises sociales au monde. Kickstart International annonce sur son site internet vouloir sortir de la pauvreté des millions de personnes, et cela rapidement et efficacement. Il y a une méthode révolutionnaire que nous découvrirons dans un instant et qui a valu à cette entreprise de très nombreux prix. Son métier, il est plutôt simple, c'est de mettre au point des outils, des machines, des méthodes qui aideront les petits agriculteurs du Sub-Sahara notamment à améliorer leurs revenus et leur productivité et à créer ensuite un véritable business. Troisième exemple, nous irons au Mexique avec Sergio Rico, qui est à ma gauche. Une pluie tout simplement qui devient solide et qui va permettre de lutter contre la sécheresse. Nous entendrons donc ce chimiste mexicain qui est venu avec quelques slides pour que l'on comprenne exactement le procédé chimique à partir de chimie verte, il faut le préciser. La pluie se transforme en grains et elle reste dans le sol pour irriguer les terres et donc lutter contre la sécheresse. Ça aussi, c'est une révolution qui est en route. Quatrième exemple, aux États-Unis, Mike Biddle, bonsoir et bienvenue, président fondateur de MBA Polymers, créé il y a 19 ans. Son métier, tout simplement transformer les ordinateurs, les jouets, les téléphones qui sont en fin de vie, mais aussi les appareils ménagers et tous les plastiques des vieilles voitures, pour les transformer en biens durables. Ce recyclage des matériaux plastiques est désormais un vrai business durable bien sûr. Les plus grandes entreprises mondiales font appel à vous, MBA, pour intégrer des plastiques recyclés. Et du coup, 80% de l'énergie est économisée et des tonnes de CO2 en moins sont rejetées dans l'atmosphère chaque fois qu'un plastique recyclé est utilisé. On parlera donc de révolution du plastique dans un instant. Et puis le cinquième invité vient de Finlande, M. Jarmo Eskelinen, bienvenue, président du European Network of Living Labs. Avec vous, nous parlerons de la co-création d'innovation, ou comment un laboratoire crée le futur en mettant face à face les producteurs et les utilisateurs. Et cela crée une très très belle émulation, on le verra dans un instant. Jean-Luc Valente, merci. Première question, vous êtes donc vous le président fondateur de cette entreprise Blue Kiwi Software qui met au point des Facebook pour les entreprises. Alors d'abord, qu'est-ce qui vous a poussé à créer cet outil, le Facebook de l'entreprise? C'est pour mettre en relation tous les salariés de l'entreprise les uns les autres, ou est-ce que c'est un but pour l'externe?
Thank you for the question, and so welcome everyone. I'm going to do it in English so that I guess everybody understands it, and actually the other presenters can follow me in a way that is easier. So. Yeah, Blue Kiwi, when we talk about a Facebook for the enterprise, we're talking about the whole ecosystem of a company. Actually, it's not just a company, it could be an association. We were talking actually earlier about how we can help, for example, associations to put together students with organizations, enterprises, to find actually ways to get a learning experience and things of that nature. So overall, the overall purpose is actually to mobilize people, bring talent together, collaborate. So I understand the theme being co-construction. The whole purpose here is how do you bring people from different walks of life different continents, different time zones together, and be able actually to achieve a specific goal. That is not only for the employees, but also for the partners, the customers, pretty much the whole supply chain that an enterprise can have. Any enterprise, doesn't have to be, it can be a not-for-profit enterprise, can be obviously a more traditional kind of companies doing that.
How does it work? It's exactly as the Facebook, the normal Facebook we all know?
Not exactly. Well, yes, it has a lot of similarities to Facebook, so that people can find an environment that suits themselves. In fact, the key point here is that a lot of enterprises, multinational, international companies, find that emerging countries have a much higher rate of adoption. Brazil, India, and other countries, Korea and so on, have been using social media pretty much from the get-go. The whole purpose of, we were, as you said, a pioneer. We started in 2006, which meant that as actually the advent of social media, the Twitter, the Facebook, the video, the LinkedIn, came in, we said, how can we apply that to the enterprise so that we can find groups, communities, ways of people to work together. But let's think of this, for example, this conference. We all have this pretty heavy bag with a book of all of the participants or the speakers. Why not having that actually as part of a community, a specific Facebook for the enterprise that would be called Global Conference, where we would know each other before coming here. We could find expertise, we could find out about the people, but also their publications, what they're really, their level of interest, and then bring those people into specific groups where we can, interest groups or working groups, where actually we can get things done. At the end of the day, the whole purpose is to reduce, decision cycles, is to work together better, faster, and more effectively. Avoid, obviously, from a carbon standpoint, is having people work remotely, which we see obviously more and more, so that you can actually be as effective working from home as you would be working in an office.
It permits to boost the growth, the innovation. What are the most important points for?
Yeah, indeed. Of the 20, I was looking at the booklet again, and you have 20 sponsors to this event. 7 of them use our product today. Some of them use it for open innovation, which is actually like La Poste, the group La Poste. Use it, has been one of our earliest customers, using actually a Blue Kiwi to foster more innovations from, again, any employee, not just actually the the R&D groups, but try actually to mobilize and get inputs or insights from other people that may have great ideas, but don't have actually the opportunity to speak up.
And why can we say it's a revolution?
Because it changes radically the way you work. What do you do today when you want to communicate? You use email. And email, at the same time, is a blessing and it's a curse. Because email today, I mean, you're swamped with emails. You get a lot of spam. You get a lot of work being done through email. But when it comes to collaborating, working together, email is not the tool. Attachments that are flying all over, very difficult to search and find information. Really building, again, an intelligence, knowledge repository is very difficult with email. It's all scattered, around. Here you can actually bring those pieces together and better participate. It's also much more transparent. Everything that is said is actually being available to the whole community, and therefore it's easier actually to work together.
You mentioned some customers, but who are the most important customers today, or your clients?
So the largest customer today is GDF Suez in France. We do have customers obviously overseas. Work with Telefonica in Spain. So work in actually all kind of industries, from luxury like Louis Vuitton to very industrial, manufacturing type organizations, public administrations, and any type of in terms of size as well. We have customers that are 50 people, and GDF Suez being the largest, about 60,000 people today using the platform.
And who is the most positive about this idea? Are the customers, are the salaries, employees, or are the businessmen?
Well, it's a combination, but at the end of the day, the goal is really to bring back some of the power to the employees. It's really actually to flatten the organization. It's really to be able to create, again, a spirit of innovation, of transparency as well. It goes along, corporate responsibility. It goes along, actually, a communication that is no longer pyramidal, but really more circle. We're all part of groups. I have the same right as anyone else to express myself, obviously on the business matters, and it can be curated. But clearly, at the end of the day, is actually try to bring everybody into the mix of finding solutions, not just actually bringing issues.
And what are the perspectives of this model? Do you want to implement in all over the world?
Yeah, I think actually we call it social business. I think that in the next 5 to 10 years, you will see actually every single desktop having actually a social component. In fact, most of the young generation, what we call Generation Y, Generation Z, they don't use much email. In fact, you sometimes hear people saying, students saying, I use email for people I don't like. But otherwise, you find me, a text, and then I just use, networks that I'm on to be able to communicate. But why using email? I mean, it's a tool of the 80s, 90s. It's been, it's a great tool, but it needs to be complemented by new ways of working and collaborating.
And we must say you are a specialist of these questions, because in the past you were a specialist of programs, of logiciel, software. That's why you decided to go further and to create this kind of service?
Yeah, I think that the world is changing. The information technology has been driven by technologists and by businesses. What we call it today, there's really a change, a radical change, which is consumerization of IT. We bring devices to the company. We bring ideas saying, hey, why can I do that home on the internet doing YouTube or whatever, and I can't do it at work? Why is the application so, 80s or 90s, so clumsy, so difficult to use? Why there are no tools to be able to do a number of things together? So the whole purpose here is that we're forcing organizations actually to take what we call Web 2.0 or technology from the 21st century, and we will see more of it. First of all, obviously, the mobility aspect is very key. Some of you have tablets, many of you have Macs. Many organizations still do not today accept Windows machine, but not Apple-type machines. And being able actually to bring your own device to work, an environment that you're familiar with, makes a lot of sense, because that's where your environment is. And then obviously you're no longer attached to a place. You can do work wherever you are. In a cab, using your mobile, your iPhone or an Android machine, or obviously being in the airport waiting for your flight using an iPad, for example.
And does that mean in the future it will be easier to work at home instead of going to your office?
I hope so. In fact, Atos, the company that I'm part of, so Blue Kiwi was acquired by the Atos group earlier this year, 80,000 people within Atos. There is a program that encouraging actually people to work remotely, also to have an impact on carbon reduction, and also bringing actually more. We have a program called Wellbeing at Work, which means that you don't have to be at work to do your work.
And what can we do for the old generations, for our father or our people who are now 60 years?
I think there is actually a misconception here of people that are older and that don't use actually those either devices or programs. In fact, today we see that 50, 60, even 70-year-old generations know very well how to use at least the Facebook type applications. It's kind of simple, intuitive, and what we need to do obviously is bring those tools to the masses, make them very easy to use. The ergonomics very key. And I don't think that there is a divide in terms of generations when it comes to communicating.
Okay, if you have some questions, please just after this, at the end of the meeting, of course, you will have the floor. Mr. Nick Moon is here on the right. Thank you for coming, Mr. Mick Moon. Alors je vais le faire en français parce que j'avais préparé l'introduction. Donc vous êtes cofondateur de Kickstart, économie sociale, commerce équitable, 133 000 business, 133,000 business created in the world, thanks to your process to fight again the poverty. Vous fournissez des bons outils, des bonnes méthodes aux familles modestes en Afrique. En fait, tout simplement, vous allez les voir, vous développez des machines et ensuite vous créez un business. C'est tout à fait fantastique. It works. It is a success today because it's very difficult to believe in such an incredible method.
Well, thank you, Eric. And if I may quickly correct you, you introduced me as coming from the United Kingdom, and I do originate there. But I want you to look at me, if you wouldn't mind, as a 30-year-old Kenyan, because I went there 30 years ago and I live there since then. So Kickstart actually began in the slums of Nairobi, and what we're dedicated to is creating technologies specifically in the interests of the people at the bottom of the pyramid, and then developing the market channels by which these solutions reach the people that need them. Mm-hmm. So we really look at the poorest people, and the poorest continent in the world is, of course, Africa, and the poorest people in that continent are the smallholder farmers, the so-called one-acre farmers. And ordinarily, they are the recipients, sometimes unwitting, of sympathy and charity and handouts. That, to me, is a sticking plaster solution. It doesn't really get to the bottom of the problem that we're trying to resolve. So we take a completely different view of folks at the bottom of the pyramid. We say that they are enormously enterprising, they're very, very hard-working, they think out of the box, they adapt to situations very, very quickly and readily, and they are almost born entrepreneurs. They are entrepreneurs by virtue, by force of circumstance, or by obligation. They have to be entrepreneurial just to stay alive from one day to the next. So the trick then is to see, well, how can we ensure that they make much more productive use of the time and their energy? And rather than looking at what they don't have, we look at what they do have and say, well, how can we help them to add value to their existing skills and assets? So since they're smallholder farmers and they have farming skills and they have a small piece of land, and there is a guaranteed growing demand for food, it seems ludicrous that smallholder farmers across sub-Saharan Africa are currently net importers of food into their households. I mean, it's an oxymoron that farmers should go hungry when in fact they can produce something which will satisfy the market. So we develop technologies which help them to add value, as I say. And they're branded, they're called Moneymaker. All our products are branded Moneymaker products. These are generally human-powered machines because people have time and energy. They're not normally on the electricity grid. Their fuel is extremely expensive. So they have quite a lot of time. And they have a lot of smarts that they want to use. So an example is a small treadle-operated irrigation pump which allows smallholder farmers to break the cycle of poverty that they're currently trapped in by doing irrigated agriculture. I'm sure you realize that 97% of agriculture in Africa is rain-fed. And that means a sort of feast-famine production cycle. People grow food all at the same time, and when they take it to market, the prices plunge down through the floor, and 2 or 3 months later, when they don't have any food, they have to go back to the market and buy it when the prices have gone up through the ceiling, and so they don't have any money next planting season to invest. So they're stuck in that poverty cycle. If we can get them out of that and align production more closely with demand, they can increase their productivity, of course, and increase their incomes. And generally what we're seeing as a result of the people who invest in our technologies, because we sell them to people through the market, they increase their productivity and ergo their incomes by a factor of about 4 or 5. And that takes them out from below the poverty line into the sort of lower rungs, if you like, of the middle class. And it empowers them. It gives them the purchasing power with which they can translate their needs into market demands. And their needs are the same as everybody else's needs: how to feed their families, how to educate their children, and so on and so forth. And in these days of market and cash economies, which are common all over the world, what they really need to do is find a way to make money. So that's what we do.
And what is your feeling about non-governmental organization? They are not efficient?
Well, I think I have to be a bit careful what I say. I used to work for a very large one. I think they have got the right problem and they've found the right leverage point, but they're pulling the lever the wrong way. I don't think people want charity. Charity is unsustainable, it's expensive, and it's also demeaning. Because if you give something to somebody for free, somebody that you don't know, you're really saying, well, you're the child of a lesser God. I'm from here and you're from there, and I feel sorry for you, I'm giving you this thing. So what they really want is an opportunity and a chance to use their smarts to get ahead themselves. And if you present them with an opportunity that makes sense in terms of their socio-economic circumstances or realities, you'd be surprised how quickly and readily they adopt those solutions and technologies. And then you leave them to it. They go ahead and do the rest. But it is important to use a market-based approach. I mean, my organization is a bit of a hybrid. We do use donor money for the development of technology, and we also use it initially to sort of catalyze the delivery of the solution through the marketplace. But over time, the need for that subsidy, because that's essentially what it is, diminishes down to zero, and then you create a brand new industry, a brand new market. So NGOs, well, I mean, there are lots of NGOs. I mean, it doesn't really describe anything. It's a non-something. So, but I do think traditional charity is passé. It's not working. It's not sustainable, and we need better ways.
And when you are in Africa, you have farmers in front of you. You say to these farmers, I'm going to make you money. It's possible, they believe you. The farmers are traditionally very conservative. They're very risk averse, and in Africa, where the infrastructure is still very, very poor, they're very difficult to reach. So it does take a considerable time and effort, but really it's the application of standard proven business models of creating a solution and then driving and building awareness and ergo demand for that solution, and slowly building a brand over time so that you become familiar and trustworthy and reliable. And what are today your best successes in Africa? If you have only 3 fantastic examples, what could you say?
Well, by far and away, the most successful hardware technology that we produced is a human-powered micro-irrigation pump. We have 2 versions. One, we're asking you to make a capital investment, because that's what it is, of around $40, plus a considerable amount of sweat equity that you have to add to that in order to really. And there is another pump which costs about $100, which is a considerable investment you're asking people to make. But we do have other machines. We have ones for oil pressing, so squeezing cooking oil out of sunflower seeds and sesame seeds, etc. And if you do that, you basically quadruple the value of the raw commodity. We have hay baling machines and various others.
And this model is one of the solutions to fight against the poverty in the world and the problem of local economy. Do you think it's possible to implement this model in other countries, poor countries?
Oh yes, certainly, and in other sectors of the economy as well. And I think there are a number of examples, not Kickstart, which illustrate that very well. But the important point to remember is that the so-called base or bottom of the pyramid is not just an untapped consumer market, which a lot of people already know and are trying to serve, but I would suggest it's an untapped investor market in terms of, well, people are not investing in the stock market as such, but they're investing in themselves and their own businesses. So that's the attitudinal shift that I think it's important to make. And smallholder farmers across certainly East and Southern Africa, which is generally where we work, although we also work in Burkina Faso and Mali, are very, very quick to recognize a truly genuine opportunity, I think. So there's no mystery here. It's just an application of a well-tried and tested model, which has worked very well in developing countries, and approach people that way.
But in the meantime, you said we must go faster, because it's too
Yes.
long today.
Yes.
It's what you say on your internet site.
Yes. Well, you know, there are 7 billion people in the world right now. There are going to be 9 billion before very long. 1 billion of those 7 billion are African, and that population is going to double. And most people realize that we've got a food security issue. So if there is such a guaranteed and growing demand for basic food across the world, with growing middle classes as well as growing populations, where is the solution? Well, it's quite obviously Africa, because it's the biggest continent in the world. They've got loads and loads of unexploited, undermanaged arable land. They have a lot of people, almost all of whom are less than 25 years old and eager to do something with their time and energy. And contrary to a lot of people's thinking, there's a lot of water in Africa. You've got the land, you've got the labor, and you've got the water. There are various other things when I to do soil health solutions and so on. But if we can accelerate this process, then we can bring them into the market. Africa can really live up to its sort of latent competitive advantage, which is as a food basket for the world, and bring people into the market this way.
And the rest of the world is ready to buy, to purchase these products from Africa? They are ready?
Well, sure. I mean, we've had green revolutions everywhere else in the world. Different with better seeds and better fertilizers and better other biotechnologies, and with the spread of all kinds of different ICT applications which assist in that. But Africa is still waiting for it. We haven't increased crop yields in Africa at all in the last 40 years, whereas they've gone up 400% or 500% in India. They've gone 400% or 500% up in China. So it's a solution waiting to happen.
You say it's perhaps the fourth economic in the world after China, USA, Europe. Why not?
Well, yeah, I think that it's the place of the future, quite frankly. Aside from smallholder farmers, certainly where I live in Kenya and East Africa, there is in the urban areas, as people inevitably move from rural to urban areas looking for jobs, there's an enormous amount of innovation on the part of very young and smart people there. The development of new software applications and so on and so forth. Put these together, and I would really honestly suggest that that is the place to invest in the future.
Thank you very much for this very interesting topic, and I'm sure we'll have some questions for you at the end of this meeting. Mr. Rico Velasco, bonsoir. Alors je vais parler en français encore parce que vous êtes hispanisant. Vous avez donc créé la société Silos de Agua, et je le disais tout à l'heure en introduction, c'est tout à fait fantastique car c'est un procédé révolutionnaire. Vous êtes tout à fait capable aujourd'hui de récupérer les eaux de pluie et de les transformer en gouttes de pluie solides qui seront stockées dans des sacs et qui seront ensuite vendus pour nourrir les terres qui souffrent de sécheresse dans le monde entier, et à commencer d'ailleurs par le Mexique, puisque dans le département du Sonora, il y a énormément de problèmes de sécheresse. Et le plus fantastique, c'est que ce produit que vous avez mis au point à partir de chimie verte, il permet de produire des cultures riches et beaucoup plus luxuriantes qu'avec de l'eau traditionnelle, et sans aucun produit chimique. Alors, vous pouvez peut-être traduire, non? Peut-être que je parle trop vite. En espagnol. Vous n'avez pas eu la traduction peut-être, hein?
Yes, I understand.
Bon, c'est pas grave, c'était l'introduction. Ma première question, c'est comment avez-vous eu l'idée de créer ce procédé chimique, de transformer l'eau de pluie? Comment avez-vous eu l'idée de la transformer en eau solide que l'on peut stocker dans des sacs? Voilà. Alors, le micro ne marche pas? Pardon. Et nous aurons bien sûr quelques visuels que vous verrez sur les écrans dans un instant.
Okay, thank you for the questions. I'm sorry, my English is very little and nothing is in French, but Mrs. Vallejo helped me to translation. My participation is in Spanish. Okay. Bueno, la primera parte para la aplicación de polímeros que son fabricados en los Estados Unidos.
Peut-être que Madame peut traduire au fur et à mesure en français si ça vous est possible pour que tout le monde puisse comprendre.
D'accord, dans la première partie, c'est par rapport à la production de polymères qui sont fabriqués aux États-Unis.
Es primero hacer conciencia entre las poblaciones más pobres de la importancia que tiene la lluvia.
C'est de créer une conscience sur l'importance de la pluie parmi les populations les plus pauvres.
Si bien la lluvia nos cae del cielo, llega de las nubes, no la aprovechamos, sentimos que es un agua que no tiene valor y la dejamos correr por los techos, los ríos y las cañadas y esta agua se pierde.
Même si la pluie, elle vient des nuages et on sent qu'elle sera là tout le temps, on la gaspille, on la laisse passer sur les toits et on la gaspille.
Para ello hemos experimentado en la República Mexicana con muchas poblaciones donde lo primero es hacer conciencia del valor de la lluvia.
Donc on a commencé à faire des expériences avec plusieurs petites populations au Mexique sur créer une bonne conscience sur l'importance de la pluie.
La lluvia, aplicamos los polímeros que están dentro del área de los superabsorbentes de agua.
Donc on applique des polymères qui font partie des super absorbants de l'eau.
Donde por cada kilo de este polímero, que es un polvo semejante al azúcar,
et donc pour chaque kilo de ce polymère qui est comme une poudre similaire au sucre,
podemos solidificar desde 400 hasta 500 litros de agua de lluvia.
On peut solidifier de 400 à 500 litres d'eau de pluie.
On dit que vous vous êtes inspiré des couches pour bébés, c'est exact?
Decimos que usted fue inspirado de los pañales de bebés.
Es semejante al pañal de un bebé.
C'est
Pero
similaire aux couches.
no es el mismo producto, no es el mismo polímero,
Mais c'est bien sûr pas le même produit ni le même polymère.
pero es semejante a que vamos a usar estos polímeros en la raíz de las plantas.
C'est similaire dans le sens où on va utiliser ces polymères dans les racines des plantes.
Y en consecuencia es como pueden poner un pañal desechable en la raíz de las plantas.
C'est comme mettre une couche desséchable, une couche dans les racines des plantes.
Pero la importancia de esta tecnología es que podemos aprovechar más eficientemente el agua de la lluvia.
L'importance de cette technologie, c'est qu'on peut utiliser d'une manière plus efficiente l'eau de la pluie.
En muchos lugares pobres, donde no se pueden producir alimentos, tienen lluvia, pero no tenían mecanismos para aprovecharla eficientemente.
Dans plusieurs endroits très pauvres, il y a de la pluie, mais pas les mécanismes pour l'utiliser efficacement.
Nosotros lo que hacemos es primero cosechar la lluvia a partir de los techos de las casas, de las oficinas o de los centros comerciales.
Donc ce qu'on fait, c'est qu'on collecte la pluie dans les toits des maisons ou des bureaux ou des centres commerciaux.
Luego utilizamos el polímero,
On utilise le
que lleva el
polymère
nombre químico de poliacrilato de potasio,
qui a le nom chimique de polyacrylato de potassium
y solidificamos el agua de la
et
lluvia.
on solidifie cette eau de pluie.
El agua de la lluvia, una vez sólida, es posible almacenarla en costales
Une fois solide, on peut mettre en storage dans des,
en un sac,
dans
Des
des
sacs,
sacs.
des sacs.
Merci.
y transportarla sin necesidad de tuberías, bombas
Donc, ce qui fait
o
beaucoup
energía
plus
eléctrica.
facile son transport sans qu'il y ait besoin de tuyaux.
And for you, it's a solution for the future, for the countries which have some big problems with water. It's the solution of the future.
¿Es esta la solución del futuro para los lugares donde no hay tanta agua?
Sí, en la práctica hemos logrado la solución del hambre,
Non.
La
Dans la
pobreza.
pratique, on a arrivé à une solution pour la faim, pour la pauvreté
la pobreza y de la emigración,
et de l'immigration aussi.
porque las personas tienen solución al agua
Les personnes ont une solution à l'eau
en su lugar, aunque no dispongan de agua potable,
dans leur toit même s'ils n'ont pas de l'eau potable.
y ya no abandonan su tierra.
Et donc, ils ne doivent plus partir de leur endroit.
En términos prácticos, la lluvia sólida es un sistema de riego,
Le solide, c'est un système d'irrigation,
porque siempre hemos regado desde que la humanidad existe con el agua líquida.
on a tout le temps fait de l'irrigation avec de l'eau liquide.
Cuando tenemos agua sólida o lluvia sólida en la raíz de las plantas, esta no se infiltra, no se evapora
L'eau solide ne s'infiltre pas, elle ne s'évapore pas,
y solo se consume el agua que la planta se toma.
et on va juste consommer l'eau que la plante va utiliser.
Tenemos ejemplos de plantas de sombra dentro de casas jardineras o macetas
On a des exemples avec des plantes, surtout dans des maisons, des
que
plantes de
regamos
l'ombre,
cada 6 meses
qu'il faut juste irriguer tous les 6 mois
con 5 litros de agua
avec 5 litres d'eau
en cada ocasión.
chaque fois.
Esto
Ah.
es 2 riegos por año y solo 10 litros de agua por año.
Donc cela, ça veut dire 2 irrigations par an et, ¿cuántos litros?
10 litros.
Et 10 litres d'eau par an.
And what are the perspectives with this business? It must be fantastic for you. You have Africa, India, Central America, all the countries who have problems with water. That means a fantastic business all over the world. Have you got today a green light from the Mexican authorities to make a business with that?
Sí, consideramos que es una importante oportunidad para negocios porque se pueden solucionar los problemas de muchos países pobres
C'est une très grande opportunité pour faire des
en
business,
cuanto a la producción de alimentos
surtout dans les pays pauvres par rapport à la production de nourriture.
y con ello la pobreza y
Donc ça,
es,
c'est
y
une
es muy,
solution
y
pour
es
la
muy
pauvreté.
fácil usarla.
Et c'est une solution aussi très facile à utiliser.
En lugares pobres hemos pasado de 600 kilos de maíz por hectárea a 10 toneladas.
Donc on est passé par exemple dans des endroits pauvres de 600 kilos de maïs à
10 toneladas.
à 10 tonnes.
En frijol, por ejemplo, de 450 kilos por hectárea a 1800.
Oui, donc
En frijol,
oui, aussi
beans,
avec des beans, on a passé de
de 450 kilos
de 450 kilos
a
à
1800 kilos por hectárea.
dans la production par hectare.
And today, what is a business model for you? It is a kind of startup, or is it a big company, well known all over the world, Silos de Agua? What is your situation in terms of economic points?
La compañía Silos de Agua es aún pequeña. Básicamente somos 5 personas,
Notre entreprise est assez petite, on est 5 personnes,
pero comercializamos el producto a través de distribuidores en muchos
mais
países.
on échange ce produit à travers de distributeurs dans différents pays.
El objeto principal es nuestro lema: reducir en el mundo el hambre, la pobreza y la inmigración.
L'objectif principal, c'est de réduire la pauvreté, la faim et l'immigration.
Es de Aida. Thank you.
I'm sure Mr. Nick Moon would be interested He is going to make the link between his farmers and you. I'm sure it will be a possible success and a possible business for you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mike Biddle. Bienvenue, on va reprendre le micro. Mr. Biddle, président de MBA Polymers. Donc je le disais en introduction, vous êtes le leader mondial de la production de polymères à partir de plastique recyclé. Votre méthode permet de réduire de 20% l'énergie nécessaire à la production de plastique issus de la pétrochimie. Autrement dit, vous recyclez tout ce qui est recyclable, des plastiques qui étaient dans les voitures, les jouets, les anciens magnétoscopes, tout ce qui contient du plastique, et ça fait des tonnes et des tonnes de déchets chaque année. Donc c'est un vrai business qui existe. Et ce qui est intéressant, c'est que vous avez dit dans votre site internet et dans vos conférences aux États-Unis qu'on recyclait toujours, après tout, l'or et l'argent. C'est vrai qu'on ne jette pas l'or et l'argent par la fenêtre, enfin, sauf certains pays et certaines personnes. Mais curieusement, tous les plastiques, parfois, sont mis à la décharge, sont broyés et ne sont pas utilisés. Votre business, c'est ça. Et ça marche de mieux en mieux. C'est bien cela. It's a success all over the world.
Yes, and thank you. I'm going to ask probably a silly question of this audience, but how many of you in this room have at least one or more of these things that you live with or couldn't live without?
Effectivement, j'avais oublié de parler du mobile phone. La génération évolue et on en jette pas mal.
And I assume you have computers and electronic devices throughout your home. You probably have some type of motor vehicle sitting at home, if not here, and many things in your life that we take for granted. And as we've heard at this conference already, the population's increasing, but more importantly, the affluence and the consumption of that population around the world is increasing even more rapidly. And those same people want the same toys and tools we take for granted every single day. To make those toys and tools requires a lot of resources. Energy resources.
It doesn't work?
Can you hear me okay?
Problem with the microphone? It's a battery.
Okay, I'll recycle that later. Just I'll take that with me. So it requires an enormous amount of resources, and the metal resources and minerals we mine in ever deep mines, ever widening mines around the world, and the plastics that go into these items, we drill oil wells and ever deeper oil wells in ever more remote and fragile locations in order to get those resources. The good news is, in many parts of the world, particularly here in Europe and much of Asia, there is policy in place to make sure that when this stuff reaches the end of life, it is recycled in a responsible manner. Not in the US yet, I'm very sad to say, and I could go on for hours about why it's not happening in the US, but I'll leave that for another conference or another day or maybe dinner discussion. And those recycling facilities here in Europe and in most of Asia shred these items to small bits all mixed together, and they recover mostly the metals. And what's left behind is a very complex mixture of every other material that goes in these devices, predominantly plastic, but also wood, fiber, fabric, foam, rubber, glass, dirt, because the recycling operations aren't always the cleanliness, and even occasional dead animal. That material is usually landfilled or incinerated around the world at a high environmental cost and a high economic cost. And most people think it's because those materials that are left over after the metals are recovered have very little value. However, the plastics are actually more valuable than steel on a price per weight basis, 3 to 4 to 5 times more valuable, depending on the type of plastic, sometimes even more. And there's even more plastic consumed in the world each and every year on a volume basis than steel. We consume in the world 500 billion pounds of plastics every year. And most of that goes in landfills or is sent up in smoke. So my idea 20 years ago was quite simple. These resources are much too valuable to throw away or certainly send up in smoke. I think putting some of them in the ground is a good idea for the nappies, but mostly it's not a good idea. We should reuse those resources because they're too valuable. So we set about developing technology to mine plastics from these extremely complex resources. And you might ask, if there's so much plastic in the world and is so valuable compared to steel, for example, why is the recycle rate less than 10%, whereas that for metals is usually over 90%, assuming it makes it to a recycling operation? It's because plastics are extremely complicated to recycle. They're very similar to one another. If I put a pile of metals in front of most of you and give you a magnet, within 5 minutes I could have you separating all those metals from each other because they're very different in density, they're different in color, they're different in electrical and magnetic properties. Plastics, if I put a pile of plastics in front of you, and I have a PhD in plastics, I couldn't sort them. It's impossible because they have overlapping densities, their electrical and magnetic properties are more or less the same, and any plastic can be any color. So the traditional separation techniques that we use for other materials simply didn't work for plastics. That's why it took me 20 years to get from the idea to actually implementing it on a commercial scale. But I'm happy to say that we now process approximately 300 million pounds a year of plastics in our plants around the world. That sounds like a lot of material, but it's still less than 1/10 of 1% of the plastics that we make around the world. So there's a lot more work to be done.
But your job is to find the plastics, to buy the wastes, and after that to sell them and create a business.
Exactly.
So you have the function of the recycling this plastic, not only to buy and to destroy them.
Yes, and thank you. My intention from day one was not only to find a better home for the waste, to make the waste go away. And by the way, a lot of this plastic is burned in a lot of developing countries to get to metals that are attached to it, and this has some very toxic implications. So there's also a environmental and human health and safety issue associated with how the very small amounts of these plastics are recycled in many countries. So that was part of my focus, but the other part of, a big part of my focus was to create a more sustainable way of making plastics instead of from petrochemical and natural gas. And sustainable not just in the environmental sense, but sustainable in the economic sense as well. And we indeed do that now because we're starting with waste instead of oil, and we all know what's been happening to oil prices over the last decade or so, and I think we'll continue to see because it is a finite resource. And our conversion process, the process we use to separate the plastics from waste, only consumes around 10%. So it's actually a 20% consumption. It's an 80 to 90% savings of energy compared to making it from petrochemicals, because we're simply separating materials. It's a mechanical, like a mining, we call it above ground mining. In fact, it's a mining process. Whereas to make plastics from petrochemicals, you have to break down the molecules and recombine them to make all the different plastics. It's a quite energy intensive process besides starting with oil or natural gas. So we solve both of those issues. We start with waste, and our conversion process is much more efficient. And the good news is we deliver this plastic to our customers at a price less than they're paying for virgin today. And we sell to the largest electronics and appliance and automobile manufacturers in the world.
And which countries are the best of the class today?
Well, we operate here in Europe. We have a plant in Austria and our newest one in the UK. And we also have a plant in China because a lot of the electronic stuff, at least, is made in China. So we're in the heart of the electronics valley, if you will, in Guangzhou, China, because that's where our customers are for the plastics from the electronics. We need more capacity, as I said, but for us, it's all about raw material. Now, that might sound silly since I said there's 500 million pounds a year collected or used each and every year. The issue for any recycler, not just our company, is what we call the first mile problem. In technology, you hear about the last mile problem. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, but I've got pretty slow internet to my house because getting ultra high-speed internet to every house is very complicated and expensive. That's what's known as the last mile problem. In recycling, it's the first mile problem. Getting that stuff out of your hands and out of your house and out of your garage and off your shelf to a recycling facility is by far the most expensive part of the equation. In the US, we simply throw it in a trash can because it's the easiest thing to do. Again, here in Europe and parts of Asia, there are policies in place where that's actually illegal to do. So the infrastructure has developed to get that to solve that first mile problem.
And what can we do to give a hand to countries as Egypt or India who have have a lot of wastes everywhere, and it's a big problem for the environment in these countries. Have you got a solution for the future?
Yes, we hope so. I mean, we are starting to work on that. In fact, I visited India. I hope to make it to Africa. One of my colleagues has been to Africa just at a workshop a little over a month ago in Ghana for two reasons. One, to keep them from hurting themselves in the act of recycling. So to teach them the proper ways of recycling so that they don't hurt the people doing the recycling or hurt the local ecosystems. But also to try to see if we can't create new jobs and actually businesses in those parts of the world by harvesting raw materials and turning them back into a resource. So that activity is just starting, I would say.
And that means in the future polymers will be less expensive as today?
I hope so. I have to say I'm probably one of the few people on the planet that like high oil prices, though, for two reasons. It drives behavior, even in America, to less fuel consumption vehicles, but it also, of course, makes our job a little bit easier.
And do you think, in terms of perspective, if in the future it will be so possible to recycle our wastes directly in your apartment? Will it be possible to create a system to recycle ourselves, our wastes?
I don't think it's necessary. I think, thankfully, for technology, we have fantastic sorting technology available, not just for plastics, but now for growing other materials. So the beauty is, and again, I'll say even in America, because I think we're the lowest on the totem pole with respect to recycling, unfortunately, as we are with many environmental measures. There's this notion of starting to collect waste in a mixed, what's called single stream collections at material recycling facilities. So you can put all your recyclable materials into one bin, and automated technology along with some human sorters can separate it into various types of material streams, and then it goes on to further more sophisticated processors like our company to turn it into the individual types of and grades of materials. So I think because of technology, we're able to make it easier on consumers. They don't have to do the source separation anymore, which, by the way, was very difficult on the environment because you had to have multiple trucks picking up multiple loads very inefficiently. And now we can do it with a single truck to each household.
And what is your guidance to the people? Don't throw away to the dustbin or mobile phone or plastic. What is your guidance? Keep it in your...
No, send it to a responsible recycler, both so you know the materials will get recycled and so you know that it's not going to an informal network where people are probably being literally abused, unfortunately, in developing countries to recycle it improperly. So just make sure that you're using recycling responsible channels, which again in Europe is quite easy, and it's coming, I hope, to the rest of the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bedel, for this fantastic business.
Thank you.
Okay, and now we finish with Mr. Jarmo Eskelinen. Alors, vous êtes président du European Network of Living Labs, ENOL. Vous venez de Finlande, you are coming from Finland. Merci beaucoup. Vous êtes un architecte de formation, architecte, amateur de musique pop, j'ai lu également, DJ, disc jockey, fan de vélo.
Couple of decades back.
Expert dans les contenus digitaux et bien sûr l'open data. Alors votre laboratoire a permis de créer des outils digitaux du futur, surtout pour les services en ville, les smart cities, les grids. Et l'originalité, c'est que les usagers et les inventeurs travaillent désormais main dans la main, c'est-à-dire qu'on ne crée rien sans avoir concerté l'utilisateur auparavant. Ça, c'est votre idée. Et vous avez aujourd'hui 300 membres dans ce laboratoire. C'est très important. Donc aujourd'hui, ça pèse sur les décisions du futur. C'est ça?
Okay, I got most of that.
You understand what I mean?
Mostly.
Okay, mostly.
My translator isn't working, so yes, I'm here as the president of the European Network of Living Labs, which is a global organization of user-driven innovation, research and development actors. And maybe I should explain a bit of why that matters. There are basically three reasons. First is that people are actually rather capable of solving problems they have created, so it makes sense to bring users to the forefront of innovation. Second, we want to harmonize the global marketplace, especially for services, and that needs to be done in a networked way. And it's especially valid in developing markets, the community-driven approach. And third, we want to support certain enablers in our societies, which makes it possible to harmonize the marketplace, especially open approach to both data, interfaces and legislation. And especially European marketplace is totally broken when it comes to
For
services.
example, give us some examples in terms of mobility in the cities of tomorrow, energy.
I can grab a few. In Helsinki, we have opened the data of the Helsinki Transport Authority for developers to tap their services onto. There are two very popular services there which run. One is a bio-development company from Helsinki, which is a personal travel assistant, and the other which shows the real-time location of all the transport vehicles, which is nice when it's raining outside, and that you can see that there's a tram coming. That application is developed by a company from Barcelona. And no government's ever signed a deal that let's share this piece of information. If the information is available, the marketplace harmonizes itself, basically. The other success stories in living labs are mostly to do with the technology development. Also, there's a mobile operator, a mobile data operator in Belgium, which is started from a project by iLab, IBBT in Belgium, which is now spreading its business outside Belgium to other countries, basically offering very user-friendly approach to mobile data. And in Finland, there is a chain of elderly people's homes which have decided to be run without... Oh, thank you. They are basically done through a user-driven process so that the people take care of themselves. It's a collective approach to elderly living in which they have formed communities and they manage their own houses, they make their own food for each other, they clean the houses, there's zero personnel and the people are happy. But the way to do that, the only way to do that is to design the processes together with elderly people because they know how they want to live and they shouldn't be pampered to achieve that.
But please, let's talk about the, I think it's a city service. Yes, city service. What is it? What is the concept? What is the process of the city service of tomorrow?
How many of you are familiar with the concept of smart cities? Some hands are raised. I'll explain a bit because actually there's two big trends in smart cities. One is the, which we also see here a bit, is sort of infrastructure-driven smart cities, smart grids, better energy systems, smart transportation and logistics. That can take us to some point when it comes to sustainability of cities, which makes the sort of a basic structure of the city smarter. But after that, we need to live in the city. And actually, most of the energy spent in the city depends on what we do, how we act, how we behave, what are our personal choices in the city. Which means that you must make citizens smart in the city and help them to live more responsible life. And that means, for example, digital services which make you able to see how you do, how your house is spending energy, which transportation mode you should be taking. The problem with the smart city services when it comes for people services is now that there is no marketplace for smart cities because we can't start from the scratch. Most of the cities unfortunately already exist from this point of view, unfortunately. We need to retrofit the city. And all cities are different. They have different legacies, different ways to providing services, different software systems, different interfaces. If you build a beautiful sustainability app to manage your energy in your home in Helsinki, it will not run anywhere else. And there are no cities in the world which are big enough to actually build a sustainable business for a service developer. Because internet is all about critical mass and scale. So what we are doing now at the moment together with 8 European cities and spreading is to build the city service development kit, which means harmonizing the data, the service interfaces, the processes, the legislations bit by bit, so that if I build an app for Helsinki, it runs in Rome, Istanbul, Barcelona.
And what is the priority today? It is to reduce traffic jams, to regulate mobility, to facilitate transportations?
Would be nice to give a high-flying answer for that, but actually the priority today is to start with something which works. Because the cities are overly complex. If you choose the most difficult realm, you'll never make it. So we are trying to grasp the low-hanging fruit. Transport data is such. Public transport data can rather easily be harmonized across cities if we can get the communities to work with us, because governments can't do it. There's too much work to be done. But if we can build the low-level compatibility of data, rough enough compatibility of the data and interfaces, then the market actually harmonizes itself. It's a market-driven process which we are aiming for. The other quite obvious choice for Europe is tourism and traveling. If you come to Europe and you're from China, you are meeting a Babel of languages, different ways of providing services, and it is the most popular tourist destination in the world, but it functions rather badly if you are from somewhere else, from a more monocultural environment.
And what is the model in the world? The city which is the most in advance?
Cities should be enablers. I think in the future we will be looking more at the cities than at the nations, at the countries. How cities are doing basically will largely dictate of how the humankind will be doing, because the amount of urbanization is so big at the moment. There will be hundreds of millions of people moving to the cities two ways. They are concentrated in existing cities, meaning that they are moving to slums outside big cities, and the other is that there are new greenfield cities being built, especially in Asia, in China, and that's a big smart city market, of course, for infrastructure-driven services. But if you want to retrofit the existing slums into smart cities, you need to work with the communities. There's no smart grid there. There's no grid whatsoever. But if you can empower the local community so that we can create, for example, a big network of learning hubs within Africa which work across borders, that's stronger than the fragile governments which run those countries.
But tomorrow, the smart city of the future, it will be Shanghai, it will be Barcelona, I don't know.
I hope that all the cities would be smart cities of the future, but I don't think there's one answer for that. I do know that there will be really technology-driven greenfield smart cities in China, but they are a minority. Majority of the people live in existing cities, and I think the smartness of the city depends on the smartness of the people, and that depends on the access to information and services which can help you to live a responsible life. It's all about carrots and no sticks, because carrots are what we want. We need to be lured to live our lives responsibly.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you. We have now questions. We have 15 minutes left for you, so don't hesitate to use the microphone. You are the welcome, of course, because I'm sure you have the inspiration for the questions. Okay, so we just have to find the microphone. I'm going to give you my microphone. It will be easier. Voilà.
Merci. Manifestement, les deux entreprises qui nous ont parlé de leur modèle les deux entreprises qui nous ont parlé de leur nouvelles technologies pour aider les gens à se développer, je pense à l'eau et aussi à monsieur au Kenya. Est-ce que ces révolutions ont amené des révolutions en termes de répartition de la valeur? Et là, je parle du business model. Comment est vendue l'eau qui est récupérée? À quel prix? Quels sont les circuits de distribution?
Who was the question for?
Who wants to answer about water?
Is it possible to translate the key part? I do have maybe this one works actually. Sorry, I forgot that it was brought to me.
Je répète la question. In English, I try in English.
Je vais essayer de la traduire.
Ok.
Allez-y.
Non, ma question est-ce que ces révolutions par exemple, je parle de la récupération de l'eau, qui sont des vraies innovations technologiques, est-ce que ça comporte une partie révolution en termes de répartition de la valeur? Autrement dit, c'est quoi le business model? Comment on fait pour ne pas privatiser l'eau, mais que les gens à qui on la vend en tire le meilleur bénéfice.
Même en France, la question n'est pas facile. C'est pas facile à traduire. What is the business model of this business water? Where is the benefit? Oui.
Rico, je me permets. Bon. Ok, je pense qu'on est suffisamment. 1, 2, 1, 2. 3. En substance, l'eau est absorbée.
Vendez, c'est beau. Ok. Ah.
1, 2, 3.
Merci, monsieur. Oui, madame, je vais vous répondre clairement. En substance, et pour faire simple, l'eau, une fois qu'elle a été absorbée par le polymère de l'invention de monsieur Rico, elle ne peut pas ressortir. Elle reste prisonnière, capturée dans ce polymère polyacrylate de potassium, et en aucun cas, ce produit permet de ressortir l'eau en vue de la commercialiser et de la privatiser. Voilà.
Et qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec les polymères?
Qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec le
polymère?
Le business model, il est sur simplement la vente du produit.
La vente du polymère.
Absolument.
À quel prix? En fait, voilà, la question est sur est-ce que ça ne conduit pas d'une certaine manière à privatiser de l'eau?
Non, l'eau tombée du ciel, vous voulez dire? Non, non, c'est de l'eau qui vient du ciel. Donc c'est de l'eau qui est après récupérée. Au lieu qu'elle parte sur les toits et dans les égouts, elle est récupérée. Il y a le produit de potassium qui solidifie l'eau. Elle est mise dans des sacs. Ensuite, on la met dans les champs. Et à ce moment-là, quand il pleuvra la prochaine fois, ça viendra nourrir les champs. Ça garde l'eau, si vous voulez, en permanence dans les sols. Et pendant 6 mois, vous n'êtes pas obligé d'arroser.
Absolument, monsieur.
C'est ça, je pense, d'après ce que j'ai compris sur le...
That's the point. Please do use the mic, because otherwise we won't be understanding it. Just a second, there's one coming.
Excusez-moi, je suis obligé d'intervenir. Je représente Bioplan Suisse, la première entreprise de production bio en Suisse, tout ce qui est plan maraîcher et toutes les solutions techniques et pour l'agriculture d'une manière générale. Nous avons des applications à travers le monde au niveau de la reforestation. Et pour revenir à ce qu'a dit monsieur Rico, d'abord il a bien dit qu'il achetait les polyacrylamides de potassium aux États-Unis, si c'est bien ce que j'ai compris. Donc il n'est pas du tout le fabricant. Ces polyacrylamides de potassium ont un énorme défaut. Ce sont tout simplement des chaînes de monomères plastiques. Le spécialiste des polymères le sait. C'est-à-dire que quand vous mettez ces produits dans le sol, vous avez une résistance, puisque ce n'est pas attaquable par les bactéries, vous avez une résistance au minimum de 10 ans. Le micro marche. Donc aujourd'hui, il existe une technologie qui s'appelle Polyter, qui existe depuis plus de 20 ans. C'est à base
1, 2, 3, j'en ai 3, et puis il n'y en a pas un seul qui marche.
Pour la traduction.
1. Allez-y, peut-être.
Ce biopolymère, en plus, est basé sur un secret de fabrication, c'est tout simplement puisqu'il est sur une base de fibres de cellulose, elle, attaquable par les bactéries dans le sol, et en plus, elle encapsule un engrais organominéral, un engrais bio. Ce produit qui s'appelle Polyter, et je tiens à ce que tout le monde se rappelle le nom, Polyter, ce produit est utilisé dans le monde entier aujourd'hui à petite échelle. Il vient d'être sélectionné dans le cadre de la Grande Muraille Verte de Dakar à Djibouti, et ce produit vous permettra réellement une reforestation et de rendre le désert vert. Quant à la démarche des polyacrylamides de potassium ou les polyacrylamides de sodium, ces deux produits à base de monomères chaînes plastifiées n'ont pas un effet favorable pour le végétal. Comme j'ai été sur le site internet avant d'intervenir de Silo de Agua, quand vous avez un produit qui va faire une rétention active de 500 fois, je vous mets au défi de le mettre sous n'importe quel plant de tomates ou d'arbres. Vous avez votre plant de tomate ou d'arbre qui est littéralement éjecté vu le développement et la force mécanique du produit. polytère, lui, se développe en fonction du végétal et du pH du végétal. Donc, pour revenir à la démarche, transférer de l'eau solide, le bilan carbone, c'est-à-dire de récupérer l'eau, certes, ça récupère l'eau, et ça vient du monde des rétenteurs de couches culottes, ça ne vient pas d'ailleurs. En plus, c'est des plastiques. Et quoi qu'il arrive, le transfert d'eau solide, récupérer cette eau solide pour la mettre dans le sol avec un effet sur le végétal qui s'appelle le chignonnage, tout simplement, c'est-à-dire que les racines ne vont pas en profondeur et vous aurez un développement racinaire uniquement en surface, ce qui fait qu'à la moindre pluie, tout sera balayé.
Bon,
il n'y aura pas d'effet d'érosion.
On a
Voilà.
bien compris, là, votre message il est passé. Merci. Monsieur, je ne sais pas si vous voulez vous justifier, vous défendre ou apporter une précision. Je crois que c'est bien. J'imagine qu'il y a des technologies différentes les unes les autres. Là, celle-ci. Voilà. Ah, très bien.
S'il vous plaît, je vais faire un peu la traduction pour qu'on puisse bien vous répondre.
Alors, mettez le micro peut-être sous les lèvres de monsieur pour qu'il puisse...
Bueno, yo entiendo que la pregunta va encaminada si es un contaminante por ser un plástico.
C'est la question, c'est bien si ça contamine, mais le reste de la salle, non. si ça contamine à cause du plastique.
Y sobre todo la aplicación para los cultivos calificados o certificados de orgánico.
Surtout par rapport à tout ce qui est les cultures organiques.
Efectivamente, es un derivado de petróleo. Todos los polímeros son plásticos.
C'est bien un dérivé du pétrole, c'est plastique.
Pero este tiene la cualidad de ser principalmente un retenedor de agua.
Mais il a la qualité d'être principalement un reteneur d'eau.
Su principal característica es que no es soluble en el agua
Il n'est pas soluble dans l'eau
y consecuentemente los elementos de su fórmula no se ceden a la tierra ni pueden ser absorbidos por las plantas.
donc les éléments de sa formule ne sont pas absorbés par les plantes ni par la terre.
Es un retenedor de humedad
C'est juste un détenteur
que solamente
d'humidité
va cediendo el agua que se toma la planta.
qui donne de l'eau à la plante.
Pero lo importante es que esta agua no se infiltra al subsuelo
Mais l'important c'est que cette
ni
eau
se
ne
evapora.
s'infiltre pas dans le sol ni s'évapore.
A la vuelta de 8 o 10 años, las sales del agua lo incrustan y pierde eficiencia.
Après 8 ou 10 ans, et
On va peut-être pas
perd
reprendre
l'efficience.
tout le descriptif parce que je pense que la salle souhaite poser des questions au fur et à mesure. Donc je vous propose de juste conclure rapidement votre propos et après on continue d'autres questions parce qu'il nous reste 5-6 minutes. Ça serait dommage de faire uniquement ce focus sur la sécheresse. Juste un dernier mot, monsieur, si vous voulez bien.
En cuanto al medio ambiente, no causa problemas. Las cantidades que se usan son muy pequeñas,
Par rapport à l'environnement, les quantités utilisées sont très petites,
pero
donc il n'y a pas d'effet.
la principal cualidad es que retiene una buena parte del agua
Mais la principale qualité, c'est qu'il retient
y
une
va,
grande partie de
y va a
On a
reducir
bien
la
compris.
frecuencia de riegos.
C'est en tout cas une méthode vraiment très utile pour l'avenir. On a compris aussi que la méthode de bioplan, c'est bien ça, suisse, pouvait permettre de reverdir. Non, c'est une méthode suisse qui existe, voilà. Et donc il y a plusieurs formules, j'imagine, qui se défendent les unes les autres. Le principal, c'est qu'on arrive un jour à faire de la rétention d'eau et puis avoir des belles cultures dans les pays qui souffrent de sécheresse. Je pense que voilà. Et peut-être à l'avenir, si on arrive à acheter de la pluie en grains, ça sera aussi bien. Ça sera l'idéal. Alors, monsieur, je vous en prie.
Hello, I am Prakash Tiwari from India, presently the Vice President with Jindal Steel and Power Limited. Prior to this, I was the Director Policy Ecology in the ministry, was involved in making the environmental policy for the country. And our experience has been like when you are playing around with an ecosystem and when you transfer water from one location to another, you create more problems than you are creating a solution. In India, we try to do that by building a large number of canals like Indira Gandhi canals and other canals which came up, where we got water from the more areas to the desert area. And the immense type of problems that we have created in terms of invasive species, in terms of hyacinth, and a lot of other associated problems that have come. So we learned the lessons the hard way, that leave the ecosystem as it is, because as far as biodiversity is concerned, we have not yet able to progress up to that level where we've been able to understand as to how does it play with them. So do you feel that if you get this type of water and you're getting to these areas, it will have a problem on the biodiversity and the ecosystem of that area?
La pregunta principal es sobre todo si es que existe un problema para transportar el agua y eso puede tener consecuencias sobre todo en la biodiversidad.
Alors oui, on va passer, merci.
Y en la creación de especies invasoras, que no es mejor dejar el agua donde está.
Alors réponse rapide si possible.
Si quiere contestar la pregunta, si no podemos dejar a los otros.
Bueno.
Sorry. A couple of questions that I'm trying to address. I hope that's at least a partial answer. I think it's important to remember with regard to water, there's exactly the same amount of water now on this planet as there has ever been. This just goes round and round in different ways. The challenge is that there are a lot more people now, so there's less water per person. So we do need to make much more productive or efficient use of that water. Currently, and this is a very general comment, we make extraordinarily wasteful use of water. The question of access to, use of, and management of water is a huge question. And there may be different solutions in different countries. But as far as sub-Saharan Africa goes, it's important to remember that there's enough rain falls on Africa in any one year to satisfy the water needs of 9 billion people. The problem is that 97% of the rain that falls on Africa goes straight into the ocean, carrying with it an enormous amount of topsoil. So we can make a lot more efficient use of it by capturing it when it does rain from whatever technology you use, and by using much more efficient water management or irrigation techniques. Flood and furrow irrigation are extraordinarily wasteful, evapotranspiration, leaching of nutrients into the soil. Whereas different forms of micro-irrigation, where you're directing water straight onto the root systems of a plant, or perhaps onto the leaves that it grows, means that you get more crop per drop. So that is the real issue, I think. We're consuming, I don't know what the figure is, but 99% of the water we consume isn't really used productively. And that's, there is a solution waiting to happen. Together with that goes a lot of advances with the different types of biotechnology. A lot of people in Africa know about new rice for Africa, which doesn't require paddy fields. You can grow it on open fields. And likewise, all kinds of other seeds which use a lot less water. So that's a partial answer, I hope, to some of the questions that have arisen.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I just want to make a comment from what you just said. From what we know today, between 70 and 80% of the water, available water, I'm not talking about the water that is on ice, but the water that is accessible is already used by agriculture. And if we try to really capture all the water from the rain, using it for irrigation, we may destroy natural ecosystem. It may end up with even higher difficult situation than today. So we have to be careful and make sure that there is a balance between what nature needs to continue supporting us and what we can do in terms of irrigation. And also, there are areas in Africa where irrigation is not really the solution, because then you end up with salinization. So we have to be careful. Balancing our need with the need of nature is what we should do. Otherwise, we will be ending up with more, and restoration is more costly than maintaining and managing what we have.
Thank you very much. It was the last question because no, we must unfortunately stop this very interesting meeting. In few words, your answer, no? Are you sure? Nobody wants to give an answer? Oh, please.
Maybe I can say one.
Just
I think
few words, please.
I understand the concerns of the ecosystem, but I think there's lots of different percentages between 3% and 100%. So I don't think he proposed to capture all the rainwater. It would be kind of awkward idea. But I mean, if now it's captured 3%, there's lots of improvement to be done without doing much damage to the environment.
Alors quand même, pour nos amis ici présents, voici de la pluie donc en graines dans cette bouteille, si vous voulez. C'est la pluie qui est tombée tout à l'heure. C'est de l'eau d'Evian, paraît-il. Et voilà, donc transformée en graines. Voilà, donc c'est ce qui se vend au Mexique, sur les marchés. Mesdames, messieurs, merci beaucoup pour votre présentation. Peut-être juste un dernier mot, monsieur, vous vouliez? Si vous aviez quelque chose à ajouter? Rien, c'est fini, on arrête. Merci beaucoup et bonne soirée. Bon appétit.